Kody Brown sits, ramrod straight, at the defendant's table, his hands clasped together, as if holding onto every ounce of control he has. The atmosphere in this courtroom is almost palpable, thick with tension and unspoken accusations. Sunlight slices through the blinds, casting harsh lines across the polished wood floors. The room is suffocating in its stillness, and it feels like everyone inside is waiting for a bomb to drop. 5 wives, 1 man, and a storm of secrets, ready to unravel. Christine leans forward, her jaw tight, eyes narrowing as she watches Kody with barely disguised suspicion. Robyn sits quiet but intense, jaw set, fingers playing with a small piece of paper she keeps hidden in her lap. Janelle taps her knee, a restless rhythm that echoes the tension she feels inside. Meri, whom viewers have usually seen composed in public, appears as a shadow of herself. Her eyes far away, lips pressed thin, as if trying to hold inside an ocean of emotion. The judge enters, and the shuffle of robes, papers, and quiet murmurs seems ceremonial, but carries a weight that chills the room. Today's case isn't just about money or property. It's about trust, betrayal, and the delicate web of family, which has been sustained over years, but now threatens to fall apart. The room lets out a collective breath when the judge calls the session to order, none aware that it is only a temporary calm. Her words carry a raw edge, a mixture of fear and frustration, and instantly the room reacts. Christine's eyes flash with anger. Janelle leans forward, and Meri's hands tremble slightly. Even Kody, who has faced cameras and critics for years, looks momentarily lost. Robyn continues, revealing messages she found, hidden communications that Kody had sent behind the other wives' backs. Every word she utters is a slow-burning fuse, threatening to ignite months, even years of buried resentment. "I trusted you," she whispers, voice breaking, "and I feel like I've been betrayed over and over." The tension is just about unbearable, thick enough to cut with a knife. Kody tries to defend himself, his words faltering under the weight of scrutiny. He's caught in a web of his own making, and now every wife's gaze feels like a spotlight exposing his every flaw. Meri gets up next, clutching a sheaf of papers and notes, her hands shaking slightly, but her voice steady as she steps into the limelight of the courtroom. "I have kept quiet for too long," she says, almost as an admission of some personal guilt. Her testimony hints at secret financial discrepancies and clandestine communications that could shake the balance this family has tried to maintain. Every look she throws at Kody is like a dart silently accusing him of misdeeds that have gone unchecked for years. The courtroom holds its collective breath as Christine stands to cross-examine, sharp and calculated in every question. Her line of interrogation pierces Kody's defenses and works to unravel a story he had hoped was crafted well enough to withstand scrutiny. Each pointed question, each pause, and each eye roll is almost surgical as she dissects his actions with precision. Robyn's hands shake, her voice faltering as she recalls moments that may destroy the fragile trust the wives still cling to. Meri's subtle but damning observations slowly come into focus, painting a picture of favoritism and secrecy that Kody can't easily explain away. The air in the courtroom hangs heavy, like an electric charge building. The courtroom seems to go smaller as tension spirals tighter with every new revelation. The judge is silent, setting a rock-straight expression against the storm. He knows the developments unfolding in his courtroom have to do with so much more than an important legal contest. It's about the raw, muddled human heart under the veneer of a celebrated family. Then, without warning, a hand-delivered envelope slides across the table. The clerk places it carefully in front of the judge, who pauses, adjusts his glasses, and peers inside. The room goes completely silent. Shock, disbelief, and fear ripple through the wives. Kody's face pales. Christine leans back slightly, eyes wide. Robyn's lips part in a quiet gasp, while Janelle leans forward, curiosity and apprehension etched into every line of her body. Even Meri looks momentarily stunned, as if she had no idea what awaited inside. The judge opens the envelope to reveal a single recording. Whispers fill the courtroom as the gravity of the revelation sinks in. The recording captures a private conversation between Kody and one wife, alluding to favoritism, promises made in secret, and one-sided decisions potentially undermining the others. Reaction was instantaneous. Christine's eyes blaze with fury. Robyn's tears fall noiselessly. Meri's hand shakes as she grabs her notes. And Janelle's jaw tightens in disbelief. Kody just sits, frozen, the weight of exposure heavy on his shoulders. Overcome with emotion, Robyn breaks down mid-testimony. "I can't believe I was lied to again," she says in a quivering tone. Christine's face is forward, her body language visibly tight with anger contained. Meri shows signs of both pain and fear as she realizes those secrets she has kept may finally be exposed fully. Janelle is silent, but the intensity with which she watches is palpable, while tension exudes from her. Cross-examinations heat up, Christine's voice sharper with each question, and the cracks in Kody's story widen. Robyn struggles to keep her composure while recounting conversations, texts, and promises possibly broken or hidden. Meri, on the other hand, quietly but pointedly exposes financial decisions and secret arrangements that could reshape the perception of fairness among the wives. Each revelation lands with increasing weight, and the room is thick with anticipation. The recording plays out. Kody's voice, calm and deliberate in private, juxtaposes starkly against the unraveling in front of the courtroom. His words, so intended to soothe or justify, now serve as the evidence of deception, favoritism, and fractured trust. Gasps fill the room as the wives take in what they're hearing. With every second, the courtroom holds its collective breath, and the judge's face gives away nothing. Christine speaks into the microphone, her voice slicing the tension. "How could you make promises to one of us and not consider the others?" Her voice holds equal amounts of hurt and anger. All eyes in the courtroom turn to Kody. Robyn's hands are shaking. Meri is biting her lip, and Janelle's fingers drum nervously. Kody swallows as words fail him at this point of exposure. The intensity never lets up during the session. Every little movement, the shuffling of papers, the click of a pen, the clenching of a fist, raises the tension another notch. The camera of imagination lingers on silent beats, Robyn's quiet sobs, Christine's narrowed eyes, Kody's shaking hands, and Meri's frozen posture. Each moment is laden with emotion, every reaction magnified in the suffocating courtroom air. Then the mood shifts. The bailiff quietly places another envelope on the table, this one marked confidential. The judge raises an eyebrow, glances at the wives, then at Kody, and motions to open it. The air grows heavier, anticipation choking the room. Everyone knows this isn't just a procedural step. This could be the turning point of the entire case. The judge calls for a brief recess, but that doesn't allow the tension in the room to dissipate one bit. Outside the courtroom, the sun casts long shadows across the polished floor, reflecting the uncertainty and fear that have taken root. Kody sits in silence, staring blankly ahead, his mind racing through every wrong move and betrayal that has brought him to this place. The wives whisper quietly among themselves, subtle alliances forming, dissolving in the fragile bubble of the recess. Even in this temporary calm, everybody knows that the storm is far from over. Secrets have been revealed, and the trust is fractured. The envelope, the recording, the testimonies, they've set the stage for a conflict that will not end until every truth is laid bare. And just as the doors begin to close, a voice cuts through the murmur. You think you know the truth, but you have no idea what's coming next. The courtroom reconvenes after a tense recess, and the atmosphere is almost unbearable. Kody Brown sits rigidly, shoulders squared but clearly weighed down by the previous testimony. His eyes flick between the wives, each glance a reminder of promises broken and trust betrayed. Christine sits like a coiled spring, ready to explode at any sign of weakness, while Robyn's lips are pressed thin as she clutches her notes, trying to steady her shaking hands. Janelle leans forward, elbows on her knees, her restless energy barely contained. Meri sits in silence, her eyes hollow but alert, absorbing every detail, calculating the perfect moment to reveal her bombshell. He bangs his gavel, and the room quiets immediately. We will continue with testimonies, he says. The words sound like a countdown to the next explosion, and everybody knew it. The first piece of evidence this session promises to be the most damning so far. A recording pulled from Kody's personal communications that might upend everything the wives believed about their family. As the clerk readies the playback, Robyn gulps hard. Her fingers quiver slightly over the edge of the bench, but she raises her chin to prepare herself for what she's about to hear. Christine leans forward, eyes narrowing, in anticipation of the blow. Janelle stops her restless tapping, as if feeling this is indeed a moment of gravity. Meri clutches at her notes tightly, her breathing slow, yet tense, bracing herself. Kody shifts uncomfortably, his eyes darting around the room, as if seeking a way out that doesn't exist. The recording starts, Kody's voice calm and even, as he speaks to one wife in a private talk that was never supposed to be heard. I know you've been feeling overlooked, it says, but I promise that I'm making arrangements to protect your interests first. The words hang in the air like smoke, innocent enough on the surface, yet loaded with betrayal when weighed against the trials of the others. The courtroom erupts in a series of gasps. Christine's jaw tightens, her knuckles whitening where she clutches the edge of the bench. Robyn exhales sharply, stifling a sob. At the same time, Meri's eyes widen, her mind racing to connect the dots. Janelle leans forward, all restless energy focused and riveted on Kody, as the reality of favoritism and secrecy begins to set in. Robyn speaks finally, her voice shaking but firm. I can't believe this. I trusted you, and yet you promised things to her behind all our backs, she says, eyes glistening with tears. Christine cuts in sharply. How could you think this was acceptable, Kody? How could you risk destroying everything for what? Her voice is laced with anger and heartbreak, enough to make the courtroom hold its collective breath. Kody swallows, trying to explain, but his voice falters. I thought I was being fair with everybody. I didn't mean to hurt anybody, he stammers. But the wives are unswayed. Every pause, every hesitation makes him sound guiltier. The tension thickens, like a storm cloud ready to burst. Meri finally rises, clutching her notes. There's more, she says softly, yet the room goes silent instantly. Every eye turns toward her, and even Kody looks alarmed. I've held back to avoid more pain, but I can no longer stay silent. There were financial arrangements, private promises, and decisions made without transparency. Decisions that benefited one wife at the cost of others. Her words hit like lightning. Christine gasps audibly. Robyn's hands tremble, and Janelle leans forward, almost imperceptibly, her expression unreadable but tense. The cross-examinations begin. Christine's questions are sharp, methodical, and filled with emotional weight. She peels away the pretense of Kody's carefully constructed defense. Robyn struggles to keep her composure as she recounts very private moments and texts that contradict Kody's testimony. Meri follows through with more tension in her revelations, subtly accusing him of manipulations that have gone unnoticed for years. As the testimony mounts, attention turns to a witness, someone close to the family, who testifies that he or she has witnessed Kody secretly making arrangements with one wife over the others. The room tenses as the witness is sworn in. Every step they take toward the stand feels deliberate, almost cinematic, as if each moment has been choreographed to maximize tension. Events are recounted in precise detail, late-night meetings, private discussions, and covert promises that at the time seemed innocuous but were deeply divisive. Kody's face blanches as Christine leans forward, her eyes narrowed, every word from the witness landing like a hammer. Robyn's lips part in shock, and Janelle's restless energy zeroes in, her body rigid as she listens with rapt attention. Meri's eyes dart around, flashing with a mixture of dread and vindication. She knows the witness confirms everything she has alluded to. Then the final nail in the coffin is the revelation of a text message that the witness produces on the courtroom screen. The message, from Kody, confirms decisions that prioritize one wife's needs over others. Gasps, whispered exclamations, and visible anger create a ripple through the audience. Kody looks trapped. Explanations are no longer an option. Christine wears an unrestrained look of fury. Robyn's hands are trembling. Meri's lips compress into a thin line, while Janelle's restless energy has transformed into quiet but intense focus. Finally, the courtroom erupts in an unbridled cacophony. The judge demands order, but the wives remain hot with emotion. Voices sharp and trembling, they revisit old hurts and betrayals. Exchanges between them pierce his justifications, crippling his credibility further with each retort. The room feels smaller, the air heavier, as if the walls themselves are closing in around the tension that has escalated to an almost unbearable level. Then, Meri delivers her most damning testimony yet. She describes clandestine meetings, financial manipulations, and decisions Kody made in secret that could have lifelong consequences for one wife while protecting another. Each revelation lands like a blow, sending ripples of shock and anger across the room. Christine's fury is palpable. Robyn's heartbreak is visible. Janelle's silent assessment seems almost chilling. Kody, meanwhile, struggles to keep his cool, sweat beading on his forehead as the weight of exposure presses down on him. As the session nears its end, another envelope is delivered, handwritten and marked confidential. The judge raises an eyebrow, pauses, then circles his hand for it to be opened. The room holds its collective breath. The contents could upend everything again, revealing more secrets, deeper betrayals, and new alliances forming in real time. The tension is almost suffocating. The wives exchange guarded glances. Christine's piercing stare seems to ask silently, "How much more can we take?" Robyn's trembling hands and tearful eyes reflect the emotional weight she bears. Janelle's fingers drum nervously, betraying the tension she usually masks. Meri sits still, absorbing every moment, calculating the timing of her next revelation. Kody shifts in his seat, uncertainty now completely replacing whatever confidence he may have once had. The judge calls for a short recess, but the tension hangs thick in the air. Outside, sunbeams stream through the windows, casting thin, long shadows that seem to continue the unease within. Kody is frozen in his seat, mind whirling with every misstep, every secret, every betrayal that has led to this point. The wives murmur to themselves, softly forming alliances, trying the loyalties in a tenuous balance. The session closes, leaving the courtroom and the audience on edge. And just as the doors are about to close, one whispered comment drifts through the room. You think you know the truth, but you have no idea what's coming next. The courtroom, having reconvened after the dramatic occurrences in sessions past, had tension that hadn't eased. It had thickened, wrapping around all concerned like a smothering fog. Kody Brown sits ramrod straight, his jaw clenched, hands clasped on the table, but his eyes tell a different story. Christine leans forward, her piercing stare right into him, her rage barely contained. Robyn sits stiffly, shaking a little as she clutches her notes like a lifeline. Janelle leans forward, elbows to knees, restive energy barely held in. Meri doesn't move, a still shadow of calm that masks a torrent of emotion and calculation. The judge bangs his gavel, signaling the start of proceedings, and immediately the courtroom falls into an uneasy silence. Today promises revelations more explosive than before. The envelope, the recording, the witness testimony, they have set the stage, but the full depth of betrayal has yet to be revealed. Every heartbeat feels magnified. The air is thick with anticipation. The session immediately kicks off with the same witness from the day before, whose revelations have just about shaken the family's foundation. They are asked to elaborate, and what comes forth is even more salacious than before. The witness recounts several private meetings where Kody would make decisions, where one wife would be favored over the others, which were not shared or justified, or at times manipulative. Every word cuts like a hammer. Christine's hands clench into fists, her jaw taut as she fights to contain this rising tide of anger. Tears brim in Robyn's eyes as Meri's lips press together. The quiet tension builds up, almost unbearable. Then comes the clincher. The witness pulls out a bunch of emails and text messages, each carefully documented proof of Kody's secret promises. Gasps echo through the court as the messages are read aloud. Kody's voice is heard, contradicting the previous statements, with favoritism that cannot be ignored. Christine's face hardens into anger and heartbreak. Robyn's hands shake as she takes in the truth. The betrayal deeper than expected. Janelle's eyes narrow, calculating her next move in this web of deceit. Meri leans forward slightly, a flicker of vindication in her gaze. The defense attorney steps in to try to stem the damage. These are just communications that have been misinterpreted, he says, his tone even, trying to placate the rising tide. But it's clear the courtroom, not to mention the wives, are not buying it. Christine cuts in sharply, coldly accusatory. Misinterpreted? You think these lies and manipulations can be explained away? Her tone is resounding with years of hurt and frustration, striking to the heart of Kody's credibility. But Robyn, usually the most quiet, now speaks her mind. Her voice is shaking, but firm. I cannot believe I was deceived again. Every promise, every word, it was all calculated. Her gaze locks onto Kody's, and for a moment, his defenses crumble at the power of her accusation. Meri interrupts quietly, speaking of discrepancies in the family purse strings, and how Kody's behind-the-scenes actions have brought about unequal privileges and resentments. Janelle watches in silence, a coiled spring building inside her. As the session wears on, it becomes time to hear from a new witness, a close family friend who has never before been involved in this case. And this witness testifies that he heard Kody discussing plans to give one wife an advantage over the others in financial assets, property, and even family events. The room freezes as the witness recounts the private conversations in minute detail. Christine's eyes widen in shock. Robyn grips her notes. Janelle's fingers drum against her knee, and Meri's calm mask disguises the shocking revelations racing around in her brain. The witness produces a series of voicemails and recordings, each revealing Kody's hidden intentions from the rest of the wives. The only sound in the courtroom is this clear, incriminating playback. The wives are visceral. Christine is clearly furious. Robyn's anguish can be seen. Janelle's curiosity turns into quiet concern, and Meri's stoic expression masks a storm of validation. Kody swallows hard as he realizes that every excuse he had is crumbling beneath the weight of evidence. The tension escalates as Christine rises. The tone of her voice is thick with controlled anger. "How could you betray all of us like this?" she demands, each word cutting through the courtroom like a knife. Kody stammers, fumbling over words that barely come together to make weak and unconvincing explanations. Robyn's hands shake as she recounts private discussions that prove favoritism and secrecy. Janelle darts her eyes from Kody to the other wives, weighing every silent word. But it is Meri's testimony that will then pierce the room. She reveals hidden financial arrangements and private promises he made to her, further exposing this pattern of deception. The room is on edge, the emotional stakes higher than ever. With each revelation, the delicate threads that have held this family together for years begin to unravel. The wives' emotions are raw and exposed. The audience can almost feel the weight of betrayal and disappointment fill the space. Every glance, every gesture, every word carries meaning, amplifying the suspense. And then, out of the blue, the handwritten letter is presented as evidence. The contents are explosive, threats, confessions, and admissions that confirm suspicions the wives had for a long period of time, but could not prove. The courtroom erupts in gasps. Christine's lips set into a thin line, her eyes flashing. Robyn's eyes glisten with recent tears. Janelle leans forward, mute but attentive. Meri tenses her face to hold back her reactions, and Kody looks pale, finally realizing the full depth of his exposure. The defense attorney tries to object, suggesting that perhaps the letter was somehow mischaracterized or taken out of context. But Christine, Robyn, Janelle, and Meri refuse to back down. Emotionally, each recounts how Kody's secret actions have affected her personally. Christine highlights emotional betrayals. Robyn describes the pain of being misled. Janelle recounts feeling excluded from important family decisions. And Meri meticulously outlines hidden manipulations and inequalities. Each testimony sets a web of tension and drama that can be felt in every corner of the courtroom, reinforcing the previously presented evidence. Wrapping up his testimony on the stand, it becomes increasingly hard for Kody to defend himself. His voice shakes, his explanations falter, and he looks around at the women he has hurt. The courtroom shrinks around him. Judgment and expectation bear down. Glances are exchanged among the wives, silent, heavy with accusation as the truth comes near and closer to full exposure. The session ends on a cliffhanger. The judge orders a brief recess, but the tension will not break easily. Whispers among the wives are muted, but also attesting to shifting alliances, dissolving ones, as each, in her silence, works through the damage done. Kody sat frozen, the weight of exposure pressing down. He began to realize the game may be over, and no excuse can repair such fractured trust. As the courtroom has somewhat cleared, one voice speaks up. "You think this is the worst? Wait till the next session. Everything changes." This statement hangs in the air, like a storm cloud, promising even more revelations, heartbreak, and explosive confrontations yet to come. The courtroom feels heavier today, as if even the walls are closing in. Kody Brown sits at the defendant's table, hunched slightly, his hands nervously fidgeting with a pen. The tension of the earlier sessions culminates and has wrapped itself around everyone in the room now, taut and choking. Christine is leaning forward, her jaw clenched and her eyes as sharp as daggers, staring at Kody as if willing him to confess his hidden truths. Robyn sits with her hands clasped, shaking slightly, her composure cracking at its edges. Janelle's restless energy is nearly dangerous, her fingers drumming out a rhythm so thoroughly cohesive with the tension in the room that it might snap. Meri wears an expressionless face, calm on the surface, masking a storm of ideas that rushes through her mind. The judge enters and bangs the gavel for silence. "We shall proceed with the testimonies," he says. The words are almost ceremonial, but everybody knows today promises revelations far more damaging than anything before. Every witness, every shred of evidence has been prepared with such careful detail as to expose the fractures within this family. The air is heavy with anticipation, every heartbeat a drumbeat of chaos to come. Christine rises to her feet, her voice firm but trembling with emotion. "I've tried to protect the family, to stay in a good place, to give Kody the benefit of the doubt. But the lies, the secrets, I can't anymore," she says, her eyes boring into Kody's. Her words are a mix of anger and heartbreak, each word landing like a hammer. Kody swallows, his eyes refusing to meet hers as his lips press together in search of words that could explain the unexplainable. Robyn gets up next, her voice shaking but firm. "I cannot believe how I have been kept in the dark," she says. Tears course down her face as she describes scenes of exclusion, whispers she overheard, and promises Kody had made privately with another wife. Each sentence is strong, every pause an indication of the betrayal she feels. Christine leans backward slightly, her eyes narrowing as she listens, her anger barely contained. Janelle leans forward, tense, and Meri's lips press together as she prepares her own revelations. Meri stands up with a pile of papers in her hands. Her voice is even, measured, but each word cuts like a knife. "There are decisions that have been made behind closed doors," she starts, "decisions which have irrepressibly fractured the trust that existed between us." She reveals hidden financial arrangements, secret promises, and manipulations that no one outside the family could have envisioned. Christine gasps audibly. Robyn's hands shake. Janelle's fingers drum nervously. Kody himself pales as the weight of the exposure presses down. And so the cross-examination ensues, Christine leading the questions, which are surgical, direct, and filled with emotion. She pokes gaping holes in many of Kody's defenses offered in previous testimony, inconsistencies he cannot explain even with the defense team. Robyn's voice trembles every now and then as her words' weight is almost more than she can bear. Tears threaten to spill out, but she pushes on, exposing moments of emotional betrayal far deeper than missteps in finances could have been. Janelle leans forward in her chair, body taut with anticipation. Meri gives quiet, firm corroboration that adds layer after layer of believability to the charges. Then, without any warning, a surprise witness is called. A longtime friend of the family who claims to have witnessed Kody's manipulations firsthand. Their words are precise and devastating in their detail. Midnight meetings and private promises, preferential treatment obviously extended to one wife over the others. Christine leans forward, her fists clenching at the bench edges. Robyn's eyes widen wide. Meri's calm tightens, and Janelle shifts almost imperceptibly, her gaze locked on Kody. Every word from the witness lands like a hammer, shaking the courtroom at its very core. The witness brings pictures and messages as evidence, further showing that Kody's actions are intentional, secretive, and damaging. Each wife has her own reaction. Christine's anger is palpable, Robyn's heartbreak raw, Janelle's curiosity leads to quiet dread, and Meri's eyes flash with vindication. Kody shifts uncomfortably, realizing every excuse he prepared is crumbling in the wake of the evidence. Christine rises again, her voice sharp and emotional. "How could you think this was acceptable? How could you risk destroying everything we've built?" she demands. Kody's stammered response cannot calm the storm. Robyn then recounts private moments that show favoritism and exclusion. Each story adds another layer of evidence of betrayal. Meri follows with her documented evidence of secret decisions, outlining financial imbalances and hidden promises that unmistakably favor one wife over the others. Janelle's silent assessment is now a silent warning. Her eyes narrow as she weighs every word and gesture. The room feels more confined, more repressive, as the revelations mount in weight. The emotional intensity is nearly palpable. Every glance, every whispered word, every trembling hand heightens the tension to ever higher levels. Kody's defenses are crumbling with each passing moment, and the voices of the wives become louder, more insistent. The judge keeps order, but even his measured tone cannot dampen what is brewing inside the courtroom walls. Then, a dramatic turn of events. An envelope, sealed, is brought in and handed to the judge. Its contents promise to be explosive. The wives exchange anxious eye contact, each trying to outguess what new bombshell might be revealed. Kody's face pales as he realizes that the envelope may contain evidence that could completely unravel his remaining defenses. The judge motioned for it to be opened. Slowly, deliberately, the court watches as the contents are revealed. A personal letter written by one of the wives to a confidant, outlining years of secrets, betrayals, and unspoken pain. Gasps filled the room. Christine's lips tightened in anger. Robyn's eyes glistened with tears. Janelle leaned forward, and Meri's calm exterior fractured slightly, revealing the weight of validation. Kody sat frozen, knowing immediately that this letter could irrevocably damage his credibility and relationships with each wife. The defense attorney tries to argue that the letter might be misunderstood, but the wives' emotional testimonies drown out the objection. Christine recounts emotional betrayals. Robyn describes the pain of being misled. Janelle explains the quiet but painful effects of exclusion, and Meri details manipulations with long-term results. With each account, the previous evidence is reinforced, building tension that saturates the courtroom. The session is about to end when the judge asks for the final statements of the witnesses. One by one, the wives rise and utter powerful, emotionally charged words that expose Kody's actions in all their dimensions. Each testimony is more telling than the last, and suspense, heartbreak, and anger layer the courtroom. Kody's attempts to reply are weak. The weight of years of secrets has collapsed into an unshakable narrative against him. Finally, the judge declares a recess, but the tension doesn't leave. The wives murmur among themselves, subtle alliances forming, while Kody sits stock still, numb from the storm of exposure. Outside, sunlight casts long shadows across the courthouse parking lot, reflections of the uncertainty and fear that have become the centerpiece of this unfolding drama. As the courtroom empties, one whispered voice is still clearly heard. You think you've seen it all, but the worst is yet to come. The words hang like a storm cloud over the audience, promising revelations in the next session that will shatter what remains of the family's fragile bonds. The courtroom feels heavier than ever. Kody Brown sits rigid, shoulders tense, hands clasped firmly on the polished wood of the defendant's table. Every passing moment seems amplified. The quiet murmurs of the audience seem to rumble like distant thunder. Christine leans forward, her jaw clenched, eyes sharp and piercing, as if every glance could force Kody to confess. Robyn sits stiffly, clutching her notes as if they were a lifeline, her body taut with anticipation. Janelle bends forward, restless energy barely contained, her fingers drumming nervously against her knee. Meri sits composed, but her eyes are sharp, scanning, calculating, waiting for the right time to strike. The judge comes in and slams the gavel. "We will continue with the testimonies," he says, and instantly the room falls silent, with tension building up as if a chokehold were placed on every occupant. Today's session promises the most explosive revelations yet. Secrets, betrayals, and hidden manipulations that could shatter the fragile trust still lingering between the wives and Kody. Christine takes the witness stand first, her voice low and modulated, though laced with emotion. "I've tried to trust, tried to believe, tried to keep this family," she says, her eyes locked on Kody. "But the lying, the favoritism, the secrecy is more than I can stand." Her words cut through the courtroom like a knife. Kody shifts uncomfortably, his eyes unable to meet hers. Those sessions have already worn him down, so every jab hits hard. Robyn gets up next, tears brimming in her eyes. Her voice is laced with pain, yet her words cut like a razor. "I thought we were a family that was based on honesty. I thought I could trust you. The private promises, the hidden messages, they prove that wasn't true." The weight of her heartbreak is almost palpable in the audience. Christine narrows her eyes, the anger and sorrow visibly written across her face. Janelle leans forward, restless energy now focused, while the calmness of Meri hides the storm within her. Finally, Meri stands up, holding a new set of documents she obtained at the last minute. Her voice is even, deliberate, measured, but cuts to the quick. "There are secret financial arrangements and private decisions that favored one wife over others and created tension that has quietly grown over years." And she lays out the evidence carefully: emails, bank statements, and private texts that prove her story. The court is silent. Christine gasps, Robyn's hands shake, Janelle's jaw tightens, and Kody's face pales. The defense attorney steps in, trying to mitigate the effect. "These documents may be misinterpreted or taken out of context," he argues, attempting to halt the rising tide. But Christine cuts in, her voice sharp and unwavering. "Misinterpreted? Do you think lies, favoritism, and deceit can be misinterpreted?" The pain of years, the anger, the disappointment, all echoes in her tone through the courtroom. Robyn adds her own testimony, recounting emotional betrayals that go beyond financial manipulations. The camera of imagination lingers on her trembling hands, the subtle quiver in her voice, the tears glistening in her eyes. "It's not just about money or property," she whispers, voice breaking. "It's about trust, and that trust has been destroyed." Christine nods subtly, eyes glinting with understanding and shared pain. Janelle watches quietly, every muscle tense in her body, while Meri's eyes flicker with vindication. A surprise witness is called, a longtime family friend who testifies to having overheard private discussions that further implicate Kody. Their words are carefully chosen to paint a detailed picture of secret promises, manipulations, and decisions that favor one wife over the others. The room visibly reacts. Christine clenches her fists. Robyn's eyes widen in shock. Janelle's restless energy freezes into tense focus, and even Meri's calm exterior cracks with slight fissures as the witness supports some of her previous statements. Kody's look darts around the room as he pales, his fear and desperation betrayed. The witness provides a series of texts and voicemails, played out loud in the courtroom, exposing Kody's intentions in a way that cannot be ignored. Christine's anger is palpable, Robyn's heartbreak raw and visible, while Janelle's usually silent demeanor speaks volumes with curiosity and concern. Meri's face is a mask of quiet vindication, though her calmness does little to mask the emotional weight of the revelations. Kody attempts to respond, but his voice falters under the weight of evidence and emotion. Christine rises again, her tone sharp and emotionally charged. "How could you think it was acceptable to hide so much from us?" "To risk everything we've built," Kody stammers, searching for words, but no words seem sufficient. Robyn recounts private moments, exposing favor and exclusion, each story layering more tension. Meri follows with evidence of secret agreements and manipulations, exposing long-term consequences that have hit the family in deep places. Janelle silently observes almost as a warning, her narrowed eyes tracking every movement, every expression, every word. The emotional intensity reaches its peak when another envelope is handed to the judge. The contents, unseen, promise a revelation that could dramatically alter the course of the trial. The wives exchange anxious glances, trying to guess what bombshell might emerge. Kody's face loses color as he realizes that whatever is inside might completely dismantle his already fragile defenses. The judge opens the envelope to reveal a handwritten letter from one of the wives to a confidant. A letter outlines years of secret pain, manipulation, and betrayal. The courtroom reacts instantly. Christine's lips tighten in anger. Robyn's eyes glisten with tears. Janelle leans forward, silent but tense. Meri's composed exterior cracks slightly, revealing the weight of truth, finally acknowledged. Kody sits frozen, the full impact of exposure weighing upon him. The lawyer tries to make one last mitigation, explaining that the letter might be subjective or emotionally charged. However, with the combined testimonies, documents, and witnesses, the courtroom couldn't agree more on one thing. Kody's actions have caused deep emotional and relational fractures. Christine describes the emotional betrayals. Robyn exposes the hidden deceptions. Janelle narrates the subtle exclusions. Meri reveals long-term manipulations, all of which come together and paint a clear picture of hidden favoritism and secrecy. As the session nears its closure, the judge calls for a brief recess, but the tension is almost choking. The wives whisper with each other, subtle alliances forming and dissolving as all silently process the damage. Kody sits quite still, knowing every secret exposed has left him inching toward exposure. The years of deception and favoritism hang in the courtroom air, unresolved and ominous. Finally, one voice, a whisper, breaks the silence. "You think you've seen the worst." But the storm is far from over. The words echo like a warning, leaving the courtroom and the audience on edge, anticipating what the next session will reveal.